Captain Daeho Kim stood quietly on the bridge of his small research ship. Through the wide windows, he could see the dying star of Narration, burning with a terrible orange light. The star was getting ready to explode, and when it did, everything nearby would be destroyed. Down on the blue ocean planet below, 12 million Cathara were waiting to die. These sea creatures had lived peacefully for thousands of years in their beautiful coral cities. They had delicate see-through skin and moved through the water like dancers. Their voices could make the most beautiful music in the galaxy. "The final vote is in," said Admiral Taemin Park through the radio. His voice sounded tired and sad. "The Galactic Coalition has made their decision. They will not help the Cathara escape." Dr. So-Young Lee hit her hand against the control panel. She was angry. How can they just leave them to die? The Cathara had been part of the galaxy community for over 1,000 years. The big alien races that ruled the galaxy had met to decide what to do. The Vorthok were warrior aliens who only cared about fighting. The Centaurans were cold and logical, like living computers. The Zelani only thought about making money. All three groups said the same thing. Saving the Cathara would cost too much and give them nothing back. Lieutenant Jin Woo-nam looked at his computer screen. The numbers were scary. The star will explode in 6 months, maybe less. All the coalition ships are already leaving this area. Captain Kim watched as 3 huge Vorthok battle cruisers jumped away into hyperspace. They didn't even say goodbye to the Cathara. The Centauran science ships had left 2 days ago, taking all their research with them. The Zelani traders had been the first to go, as soon as they realized there was no profit to be made from a dying world. The radio crackled with messages from the planet. The Cathara were still sending their beautiful songs up to space, but now, the music was filled with sadness. They sang about their coral gardens that would soon be gone forever. They sang about their children who would never grow up. They sang about the art and knowledge that would die with them. "Listen to them," whispered Dr. Lee. Tears were running down her face. "They're not even angry. They're just accepting it." The Cathara had always been peaceful. They had never fought wars or conquered other planets. Instead, they had shared their incredible knowledge of life and biology with everyone. Their medical treatments had saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Their art had inspired countless beings. Their philosophy of living in harmony with nature had changed how many species thought about life itself. But none of that mattered now. Captain Kim's ship, the Serenity, was the only human vessel in this part of space. Humanity was considered a minor species by the big galactic powers. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and most aliens still thought of them as primitive newcomers who barely mattered. "Sir," said Communications Officer Ian Suhan, "we're getting a direct message from the Cathara Elder Council." The main screen flickered to life. An elderly Cathara appeared, floating in what looked like a vast underwater chamber. Her gilfins moved slowly, and her large, gentle eyes were filled with ancient wisdom and new sorrow. "Greetings, small friends from the young species called human," she said in their melodic language. The ship's computer translated her words. "I am Elder Deep Current, speaker for our people. We know you cannot save us. Your ship is too small, your numbers too few, but we wanted to thank you for staying when all others have left." Captain Kim stepped forward. "Elder Deep Current, we wish we could do more. Your presence brings us comfort in these final days," the Cathara leader replied. "At least we will not die completely alone. Perhaps you could carry our story to the galaxy, so someone will remember that we once lived and loved and sang among the coral gardens of Narration." The transmission ended, leaving the human crew in heavy silence. Engineer Min-Soo Park, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Captain, how many people could we fit in our cargo hold if we flooded it with water?" "Maybe 50, Cathara," Captain Kim answered. "But what good would that do? There are 12 million of them down there." "It would do some good," Park said stubbornly. 50 is better than 0. Dr. Lee nodded slowly. We could modify our life support systems. It wouldn't be comfortable, but we could keep them alive long enough to reach a safe planet. Captain Kim stared out at the dying star. In 6 months, it would explode and wipe out everything in this system. The big galactic powers had decided that 12 million lives weren't worth saving. They had ships that could carry thousands. They had technology that could move whole populations. But they had chosen profit and convenience over compassion. Sir, said Jinwoo Nam quietly, there are other human ships scattered across this sector. Cargo haulers, colony transports, even some passenger liners. Kim turned to look at his young officer. What are you thinking, Lieutenant? I'm thinking that maybe the galaxy has forgotten what it means to care about life, Nam replied. But we haven't. Captain Kim stared at the communication panel for 3 long minutes before he made the decision that would change everything. His hands were shaking slightly as he activated the emergency human fleet network. This network connected all human ships across the galaxy, but it was only used for the most serious emergencies. This is Captain Dae-ho Kim of the research vessel Serenity, he began, his voice getting stronger with each word. I am calling all human ships in the outer sectors. We have a situation that requires immediate help. The Kithara people on planet Naraya are going to die in 6 months when their star explodes. The Galactic Coalition has refused to help them. We are their only hope. He paused, knowing how crazy his next words would sound. I am asking for volunteers to join Operation Lifeline. We are going to save as many Kithara as we can, even if the big galactic powers won't help us. For the first hour, there was only silence. Kim began to worry that no one would answer his call. Then, a crackling voice came through the speakers. This is Captain Minho Choi of the cargo ship Phoenix. I've got space for about 200 passengers if we modify the hold. Count me in. Within minutes, more voices joined the conversation. Commander Hai Jin-yoon of the exploration ship Horizon volunteered next. My ship is fast, and we have good sensors. We can help coordinate the rescue missions. Soon, the communication channels were busy with human captains from across the sector. Captain Sung Min Bae commanded a grain transport called Golden Harvest. Administrator Ji-yoon Oh led a small fleet of colony ships that were heading to establish a new settlement. Even Captain Woo Jin-han, a former pirate who now ran legal cargo missions, offered his ship and crew. I know what it's like to be abandoned by everyone, Han said over the radio. Nobody helped me when I was trying to go straight. These fish people deserve better than that. Dr. Yoon-Ru Kong was working on a medical research station 3 systems away when she heard the call. She immediately began packing her equipment. I've studied Kithara biology for 10 years, she told her assistant. I know exactly what they need to survive. I'm going to Naraya. As word spread through the human community, something amazing happened. Ship captains started changing their routes to head toward the dying system. Merchants abandoned profitable trading runs. Colonists delayed their journeys to new homes. Even families on passenger ships voted to help with the rescue mission. But they faced enormous problems. Human ships were much smaller than the massive vessels used by the major galactic powers. Where a Vorthok battlecruiser could carry 10,000 people, most human ships could only handle a few hundred at most. Their technology was also less advanced. Human hyperdrives were slower, their life support systems were basic, and their ships were not designed for mass evacuations. Engineer Jun-ho Park was the first to figure out how to solve some of these problems. Working day and night on his transport ship, he developed a way to flood cargo holds with water and create temporary living spaces for the Kithara. It won't be comfortable, he explained to the growing fleet, but it will keep them alive. Dr. Kang arrived at Naraya aboard the medical ship Compassion and immediately went to work. She studied the Kithara's needs and created detailed plans for modifying human ships. They need salt water with exactly the right minerals, she explained. The pressure has to be perfect, and the temperature cannot change too much. Mechanic Sujin Kim worked with Engineer Park to spread these modifications to other ships. They created simple instruction videos that any ship's crew could follow. Soon, dozens of human vessels were being converted into water-filled lifeboats. The Cathera watched all this activity with growing amazement. Elder Deep Current contacted Captain Kim again. "Small human friends," she said, her gilfins fluttering with emotion. "We do not understand. Why do you do this for us? Your species will gain nothing from saving us." Kim thought carefully before answering. "Elder Deep Current, my people have a saying. A society is judged by how it treats those who cannot help themselves. The big galactic powers have failed that test. We don't want to fail it too." But even with dozens of human ships working together, the math was terrible. They might be able to save 50,000 Cathara if everything went perfectly. That would still leave over 11 million to die when the star exploded. Pilot Dong-Hyun Lee was flying supply runs between the ships when he had an idea. "What if we make multiple trips?" he suggested. "Instead of trying to carry everyone at once, we could evacuate people in groups." The idea was dangerous. Each trip through the increasingly unstable star system risked the lives of human crews. The dying star was sending out deadly radiation that could fry ship systems or kill everyone on board. But it was the only way to save more lives. "Captain," Kim called another fleet meeting. "This is going to be the most dangerous thing any of us have ever done," he told the assembled captains. "Some of us might not survive. Anyone who wants to leave can go now, and nobody will think less of them." Not a single ship left. Instead, 3 more human vessels arrived to join the rescue effort. The impossible mission was about to begin. The first rescue mission began at dawn on Nararea, though the dying star made every dawn look like a sunset. Engineer Junho Park stood waist-deep in the flooded cargo hold of his transport ship, checking the water temperature one more time. Beside him, Mechanic Sujin Kim tested the oxygen pumps that would keep the water breathable for the Cathera. "The pressure is good," Park said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But I've never done anything like this before. What if something goes wrong?" "Then we fix it," Kim replied simply. "These people are counting on us." The first group of Cathera refugees swam gracefully into the makeshift water tank. They moved like living art, their transparent skin shimmering in the artificial light. Despite facing death, they remained calm and dignified. One young Cathara named Gentlewave touched Park's hand through the water and made a sound that the translator turned into, "Thank you." Pilot Dong-Hyun Lee was having his own problems in the cockpit. The radiation from the dying star was getting stronger every day, and it was playing havoc with his navigation systems. "I'm flying half-blind," he reported to Captain Kim over the radio. "The star's energy is scrambling our computers. Can you make it to the safe zone?" Kim asked. "I'll get them there," Lee promised, even though his hands were shaking as he gripped the controls. Meanwhile, Captain Young Soo Nam's medical ship, Mercy, had become a floating hospital. Dr. Haewon Jung was treating Cathara, who had already been hurt by the star's radiation. Many of the sea people had burns on their delicate skin, and some were having trouble breathing. "Their biology is so different from ours," Dr. Jung explained to her medical team. "But pain is the same for everyone. We can at least help with that." One elderly Cathara named Deepsinger had burns covering half his body, but he refused treatment until the younger ones were helped first. When Jung finally got to treat him, he sang a soft melody that made the entire medical bay feel peaceful. The real problems started when Captain Minho Choi's cargo ship Phoenix tried to leave the system. The ship was carrying 300 Cathara refugees, packed into every available space. As they approached the edge of the solar system, alarms started. "Blaring engine overload," shouted Engineer Kyung-Min Lee from the engine room. "We're carrying too much weight. The hyperspace drive can't handle it." Choi had to make a terrible choice. He could either reduce the weight by leaving some Cathara behind, or risk the lives of everyone on board by pushing the engines beyond their limits. We're not leaving anyone, Choi decided. Give me everything the engines have got. The Phoenix limped out of the system, with its engines running red hot, but everyone made it safely to the human colony of New Haven. The Cathara refugees wept with joy when they saw clean water and felt safe pressure around their bodies. Back at Naraya, the rescue operations continued day and night. Captain Sungmin Bae discovered that his grain transport, Golden Harvest, could carry twice as many Cathara if they were willing to be crowded together. The sea people didn't mind the tight spaces. They were used to living close together in their coral cities. But the dying star was getting more dangerous. Pilot Jiwon Park was bringing her shuttle back to the mothership when a massive solar flare erupted from the star's surface. The wave of energy hit her small craft like a hammer. I'm losing power, she radioed desperately. Life support is failing. Captain Woojin Han, the former pirate, was nearby in his ship Black Pearl. Without hesitation, he flew straight into the radiation storm to rescue Park and her 50 Cathara passengers. His ship's shields were damaged, and 3 of his crew members ended up in the medical bay, but everyone survived. Why did you risk your life for us? Asked Elder Deep Current when she heard about the rescue. Han scratched his beard and thought about it. I spent 20 years taking things from people, he finally said. It feels good to give something back instead. The most heartbreaking moment came when the human crews met the Cathara Council of Depths. These ancient leaders had decided to stay on Naraya and die with their world. They were too old to travel, they said, and their place was with their dying planet. You have given our people a future, Elder Deep Current told Lieutenant Commander Myung Seo, who was coordinating rescues from the planet's surface. That is enough. It's not enough, Seo replied firmly. Every life has value. That includes yours. She spent 3 hours convincing the council that their wisdom was needed by the survivors. Finally, the elderly Cathara agreed to leave their dying world. As each day passed, more human ships arrived to help. Word was spreading through the human colonies, and people were coming from across the galaxy to join the rescue effort. A passenger liner, called Star Dancer, emptied out all its paying customers and filled up with Cathara refugees instead. But time was running out. The star was getting more unstable, and the radiation was making it harder for ships to operate safely. They had saved over 100,000 Cathara so far, but millions more remained on the dying planet. Captain Kim knew they needed a miracle to save them all. The dying star of Naraya had begun to shake the entire solar system. Captain Hyan-woo Go felt his ship, the Determination, vibrate as another wave of energy pulsed from the unstable star. This was his 17th rescue trip, and his old freighter was barely holding together. Captain, we've got cracks forming in the hull, reported Engineer Kung-Soo Park over the intercom. His voice was tired but determined. The radiation is eating through our metal plating. Go looked at the 300 Cathara refugees packed into his flooded cargo holds. They trusted him to get them to safety, even though his ship was falling apart around them. How many more trips can we make? He asked. Maybe one more, Park answered honestly. After that, we'll be flying scrap metal down on the planet's surface. The beautiful coral cities were starting to crack and crumble. The ocean was getting hotter every day, and many areas had become too dangerous for the Cathara to survive. Rescue Coordinator, Lieutenant Commander Myung Seo was working with the Cathara leaders to evacuate the most threatened areas first. The northern reef cities have to be evacuated today, Elder Singing Current told her through the underwater communication system. The water temperature there is already killing the coral. Seo checked her list of available ships. They had 47 human vessels working around the clock, but it still wasn't enough. Millions of Cathara still needed to be rescued, and time was running out fast. Captain In Ho Yu was piloting his transport ship, compassion through its final mission when disaster struck. A massive solar flare erupted from the dying star, sending a wall of deadly energy racing across the system. The radiation wave hit his ship just as he was loading 800 Kythera refugees. "Life support is failing," shouted his engineer. "The radiation fried our main power core." You made the hardest decision of his life. Using the ship's emergency power, he managed to transfer all 800 Kythera to Captain Min Young Ko's rescue vessel, which had rushed to help, but the Compassion was too damaged to save. "Get those people out of here," you ordered Ko over the radio. "Don't wait for us." Ko's ship, the Mercy's Hope, was already overloaded with her own passengers, but she took on the extra 800 Kythera anyway. Her ship groaned under the weight, but she managed to limp out of the system. Behind her, the Compassion's crew was picked up by other rescue ships, but their vessel was lost. The Kythera who witnessed this sacrifice were deeply moved. "The human captain gave his ship to save us," whispered one refugee named Soft Current. "How can such young creatures have such old souls?" As the star became more unstable, the rescue operations became more desperate. Captain Jamin O was loading his final group of refugees when the planet's main communication array was destroyed by radiation. Suddenly, the human ships could no longer coordinate with the Kythera on the surface. Pilot Unenheim volunteered to fly her small shuttle down to the planet to re-establish contact. Even though the atmosphere was now deadly to human life, she wore a radiation suit that was only meant to last 2 hours. But she stayed on the surface for 6 hours, helping to guide the final evacuation ships to the remaining Kythera settlements. "I can see the radiation burns through her suit," Dr. Jung reported when Nam finally made it back to the medical ship. "But she saved thousands of lives today." The most dangerous moment came when the star began showing signs of immediate collapse. The stellar core was starting to fail, which meant the supernova could happen at any moment instead of in several weeks, as predicted. "All ships, this is Captain Kim," came the emergency broadcast. "The star is going critical. We have maybe hours, not days. This is the final evacuation run." Captain Jae-Soon Lim was piloting the last transport out of the system when the star began its death throes. His ship, the Final Hope, was carrying the Kythera Council of Depths, the ancient leaders who had finally agreed to leave their dying world. "The star's gravity is getting stronger," reported his pilot Dong-Soo Kong. "It's pulling us back toward the system." Behind them, Narration was already breaking apart. The beautiful ocean world that had been home to the Kythera for thousands of years was cracking like an egg. Massive chunks of the planet were being pulled into the dying star. Lim pushed his engines beyond their safety limits. "We're not losing these people now," he said through gritted teeth. "Not when we're so close." Engineer Bo Young Kim was in the engine room, manually holding circuit breakers closed to keep the hyperspace drive working. "The engines are going to explode if we keep this up," she shouted. "Then we better get out of here fast," Lim replied. The Final Hope jumped to hyperspace just as Naraya's star went supernova. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from 100 light-years away. The blast destroyed everything in the system, the planets, the moons, the beautiful coral cities where the Kythera had lived and loved for millennia. But 12 million Kythera were now safe, scattered across dozens of human colonies and ships. Throughout the galaxy, the impossible rescue mission had succeeded. Every single member of their species had been saved by humans who had refused to let them die alone. As the rescue fleet regrouped at the human colony of New Pacifica, the Kythera began to understand what they had witnessed. These young, supposedly primitive humans had accomplished something the mighty Galactic Coalition had declared impossible. They had saved an entire species simply because it was the right thing to do. 6 months after the rescue, New Pacifica looked completely different. The human colony world had always been a quiet place with small farming communities and fishing villages. Now, it was home to the largest population of Kythera in the galaxy. Administrator Jun Yang stood on the beach, watching Cathara children play in the warm ocean waves alongside human kids. The two species had become friends so naturally that it seemed like they had always lived together. The underwater cities are almost finished, reported engineer Min Kyung Park, who had been working with Cathara builders to create new homes beneath the waves. Their biotechnology is amazing. They can grow buildings instead of constructing them. The Cathara had brought incredible knowledge with them. Their understanding of ocean life was thousands of years ahead of human science. They could heal diseases that human doctors had never been able to cure. They could grow food in the water that was more nutritious than anything grown on land. But more importantly, they had brought gratitude and friendship, Elder Deep Current. Now the leader of all Cathara survivors had established the Council of New Waters in the colony's main city. She worked closely with the human government to make sure both species could live together peacefully. "We have learned something about your people," she told Captain Sujin Park, who had become humanity's first official ambassador to the Cathara. "You measure success differently than the other galactic powers." "How do you mean?" Park asked. "The Vorthok measures success by how many battles they win. The Centaurans measure it by how much knowledge they gather. The Zilani measure it by how much profit they make. But humans, ... You measure success by how many lives you can save." News of humanity's rescue mission had spread across the entire galaxy. Other species that had been ignored or mistreated by the major powers began to take notice. The gentlefolk of Kepler-7, who had been enslaved by Zilani traders, sent a secret message asking for human help. The crystal singers of the Andromeda colonies, who had been forced from their homes by Vorthok expansion, requested human protection. Captain Chung-Woo Lee of the exploration vessel New Dawn was the first to respond to these calls for help. His ship arrived at Kepler-7 to find the gentlefolk working in terrible conditions in Zilani mining operations. "This is Captain Lee of the human vessel New Dawn," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We are here to offer the gentlefolk sanctuary and protection under human colonial law." The Zilani commander laughed at the transmission. "Humans have no authority here, little captain. These workers belong to the Zilani Trade Federation." But Lee had learned something important from the Cathara rescue. "They belong to themselves," he replied calmly. "And if they want to leave, we will help them." The gentlefolk, who looked like tall, thin trees with golden bark, had never seen anyone stand up to the Zilani before. When they realized the humans were serious about helping them, thousands chose to leave with the rescue ships. The same thing happened at the Crystal Singer colonies. Captain Ha-Young Ko arrived with a small fleet of human ships just as forces were preparing to destroy the Singers' crystal cities. The Crystal Singers were peaceful beings who made music from living crystal formations. "You cannot interfere with Vorthok military operations," the alien commander warned Ko. "Watch us," Ko replied, positioning her ships between the Vorthok fleet and the defenseless colonies. The standoff lasted 3 days, but eventually the Vorthok backed down. They didn't want to start a war with humanity over what they considered a worthless species. The Crystal Singers were evacuated to human space, where their beautiful music could be heard across the colonies. Back on New Pacifica, the effects of these rescues were being felt. Dr. Tae-Hyun-Yu was working with gentle folk healers to develop new medicines. Engineer So-Min Kim was learning how to grow Crystal Singer technology, which could revolutionize human communications. But the most important changes were happening in galactic politics. The major powers suddenly found themselves losing influence, as smaller species chose to ally with humanity instead of submitting to the coalition. 17 species have requested human protection in the last 3 months, reported Ambassador Park to the human government. "Our reputation has completely changed. We're no longer seen as a minor species." The Vorthok were particularly upset. Their military recruitment was down because species no longer feared them as much. They knew that humans would protect anyone who asked for help. The Centaurans found their research projects being rejected. Other species preferred to work with humans, who shared knowledge freely instead of hoarding it. The Zilani were losing trade contracts left and right. Their reputation for exploiting weaker species had finally caught up with them. Elder Deep Current addressed the combined council of humans and rescued species in the Great Underwater Assembly Hall of New Pacifica. Representatives from dozens of species were there, all of them allies of humanity now. 1 year ago, we were abandoned by those who claimed to be our protectors, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the water and air. Today, we are part of something new. Not an empire built on fear, not a federation built on profit, but an alliance built on the simple idea that all life has value. Captain Kim, now Admiral Kim, and leader of the human rescue fleet, stood too, addressed the assembly. We didn't save the Cathara to gain power or influence. We did it because it was right. That principle will guide everything we do. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change.